If you are an American citizen who voted in the recent election, then you did not vote for president, even if you think you did. That's not how the system works. What I'm talking about is the Electoral College. It's come under scrutiny again because, again, the candidate who won the popular vote did not win the Electoral College and will not be president. But before I get too much further into this, I'd probably better tell you that I am not a Democrat. I did not support Hillary Clinton. I didn't support Trump. I'm not a Republican, but I did prefer Trump to Hillary. The reason that's important, my personal affiliations and preferences have nothing to do with the Electoral College as a system, except that a lot of people who are complaining about the Electoral College right now are really only complaining that their candidate didn't win. Some of them are high-profile people who should know better, but they still get the argument wrong, and so they're disregarded.
How do we solve this problem of we win the election, but we don't get to be president?
Yeah.
Because this has happened twice now.
Yeah.
Since 2000. Al Gore and now Hillary. And it seems to be happening to one party.
Only us. Only Democrats.
Right.
Now, he makes it sound there as though the Electoral College was just deliberately designed to give the Democratic Party the shaft. And when you talk like that, a lot of people will just tune you out. It's because they know that you're not concerned with the system, you're just concerned with the fact that you didn't win the election. Or at least you're primarily concerned with the fact you didn't win the election. But with me, you don't get to disregard my argument as sour grapes because I didn't want Hillary to win. She scared the hell out of me. I'm glad she's not going to make it to the Oval Office. That's a silver lining to the Electoral College. But I still want the system changed. And I'm not alone. It's not just Democrats who want the Electoral College changed. In 2013, Gallup ran a poll that showed that 63% of Americans want the Electoral College to be eliminated. And this is not a new idea, because a similar poll was run back in 1948 that showed that 56% of Americans disapprove of the Electoral College. Now, if the idea is that unpopular, and it's been that unpopular for so long, why do we still use it? There are two major problems with the Electoral College. The first is that an individual vote counts for more in certain states than it does in others. The higher the population of your state, the less your personal vote counts for. Even most people who defend the Electoral College will tell you this, and they'll say it freely. Some of them, they'll tell you that it's actually supposed to be that way. The reason is they are concerned with every state having representation in a presidential election. And that makes some sense. They'll tell you that, if we change it to a popular vote, that the candidates will only campaign in California and Texas and Florida and New York, because those are the 4 states with the highest population. But I'm not really concerned with that. When I looked into it, and these are 2014 figures, I know, but they're relevant enough. The population of California is about 38 million. Texas is about 27 million. Florida is about 20 million. New York also about 20 million. If you add up those populations, you get about 105 million. Now, the total population of the United States is 318 million. That 105 million that people are afraid of, that's not even quite a third of the population of the United States. If the presidential candidates, if one presidential candidate, rather, were to campaign only in those 4 states and get a majority of the people in all 4 of those states, they would still lose if they have not appealed to the rest of the country. A third of the country is not enough to win. Now, a more intelligent way of saying it, of defending the Electoral College, is to say that 11 states have 50% of the U.S. population. That means that 39 states will not be represented as well. The candidates won't be concerned with them. I'm still not concerned, though, and here's why. I looked up the results of this election, and what I found was that in California, Hillary Clinton took 7.3 million votes, but Trump took 3.9 million. In Texas, the next biggest state, Trump took that state. He had 4.7 million votes. Hillary had 3.8 million. In Florida, Trump took 4.6 million. Clinton took 4.5 million. In New York, Hillary won. She took 3.9 million votes. Trump had 2.6 million. The big states, whether there's 4 of them or 11 of them, they don't vote as a block. In the Electoral College they do, because states, most states anyway, take all of their electoral votes and throw them at one candidate. In a popular vote, every one of those states is going to be divided. So those states, if those states really voted in a block for one party or the other, then you'd be right to be concerned that they would dominate the election. But because they're split up, you still need to win over those other states in order to win, or at least to have enough of an advantage. I'm not concerned with the states having representation in a presidential election. I am concerned with every state being represented in the federal government. But the states will be represented with or without the Electoral College system. That's what Congress is for. Every state sends its own individual senators and representatives to Congress to make sure that their voice counts in legislative issues. When it comes to executive issues, I have never voted for a president who will be good for Kansas, and that's where I'm from, in case I haven't mentioned it. I vote for the candidate who is the best, who I believe is the best for the entire nation. I hope that no one else out there is voting for a president who is good for Wyoming or Arkansas or Alaska or Minnesota. I want them to vote for the president who's best for the nation as a whole. That's what he's for. For executive concerns about your state, that's what you have a governor for. At the federal level, your state is represented by the senators and representatives that you elect. They represent your state in particular. They also have to be concerned with national issues, but they're also concerned with your state in particular. And they have to cater to your state over any other state because you're the ones who vote them in. You absolutely have a voice in the federal government because you get to vote for your representatives and your senators. And there's a direct vote there, a popular vote for each one of them. So your state will be represented at the federal level, with or without the Electoral College. The other problem with the Electoral College is the really big problem. It's one that doesn't get addressed nearly as often as the issue of states' representation, but it's a much bigger issue. What I said at the opening of this video, that you didn't vote for president, I meant that literally, and it is true. You did not vote for president, even if you cast a ballot. I didn't vote for president, and I damn well voted. I always vote in every presidential election. But we don't actually vote for president. We vote for electors. Every party has their own set of electors, and you are voting for the party whose electors you want to vote for the president. What that means is that you don't get to vote for the president. You vote for the people who vote for the president. That sounds like something out of Alice in Wonderland, I know, but that is how the system works. There is a buffer in between us and the presidency. The real problem with this, now, if those electors were required to vote for the candidate that you preferred, then this probably wouldn't be an issue. But they're not. There's no guarantee that an elector will vote for the person you want them to. There's even a term for it. They're called faithless electors. It's not a common thing. Electors are expected to vote for their party's candidate. So if you voted if you check the box next to Hillary Clinton, then the Democratic electors were supposed to vote for Hillary. But they don't have to. They're not required to. There are, and some people will tell you, well, he's wrong. Some states do require the electors to vote for their candidate. Yeah, they do. Do you know what the penalty is if they don't? A fine. That's it, nothing more than that. The results of this election have inspired a strange movement. People are trying to convince the Republican electors not to put Donald Trump into the presidency, but to vote for someone else instead. And they are raising money to pay all the fines so that they'll be able to do that. In effect, eliminating the deterrent that is the fine. This scares the hell out of me. Because what prevents an extremely rich person from paying off a lot of electors and getting their candidate in? Now, that may sound far-fetched, but it's not. We have extremely wealthy people who are deeply involved in American politics. What would prevent someone like a Trump or a Bloomberg or a Soros from throwing a lot of money at electors to change their vote and paying the fine along with it? Now, that hasn't happened yet. And a lot of people say, well, that hasn't happened, so it won't happen. But that's always a fallacy. That something has not happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. And I want to fix this problem before it becomes that crisis, not afterward. I don't want anyone able to buy a presidential vote, period. Now, the idea of the electors, believe it or not, is to make certain that the public is not able to vote for president. It's to protect us from tyranny. The idea is that if a majority of people support a really bad candidate, the electors will protect us from that by putting someone else in office instead. It's usually called the tyranny of the majority. And I think this is very strange because having the majority of people decide who they want to represent them, isn't that what an election is? So this is a rule that protects America from the results of a democratic election. It is undemocratic. And a lot of people, a lot of really smart-ass people will tell you, yes, but America isn't a democracy. America is really a republic. And then they'll explain what that means. Pure democracy is where the people directly vote on laws, and that form of government is a disaster. And that's true. America is not a pure democracy. It is a republic, because in a republic, people vote for people to represent their interests. We vote for our leadership. So if it's a republic, does that mean that it's not a democracy? Well, no. Because the two are not mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, a lot of the time, America is referred to as a democratic republic. Now, people trot out the definition of republic to show you that we're not a democracy. I'm going to look in a dictionary that is nearly as time-worn as I am. But instead of looking for the definition of republic, I'm going to look for the definition of democracy. Here it is. A government by the people, especially rule of the majority. B, a government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and exercised by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation, usually involving periodically held free elections. I'm going to repeat that because it bears repeating. A government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and exercised by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation, usually involving periodically held free elections. We are a democracy. We are a republic, that is true. But we are also a democracy, and the republic is merely a tool to institute democratic ideals. So if the Electoral College does not protect democratic ideals, if it instead can put into place a candidate that the public disapproves of, that is undemocratic. Something else that people do to defend this idea of having a buffer in between the public and the presidency is that they will roll out a bunch of quotes from the framers of the Constitution, the Founding Fathers. This is what these wise historical people said, so you should pay attention. And I considered looking it up to try to find some quotes from similar historical figures who disapproved of the Electoral College. I mean, maybe George Washington didn't like it. He thought that political parties were dangerous. But, I didn't end up looking for any quotes like that because in the end I decided I just didn't care. What the framers and the Founding Fathers thought is relevant to the discussion. But it is not a winning point at all. Their opinions are no more relevant than anyone else's.
Besides, what will posterity think we were? Demigods? We're men, no more, no less.
As a matter of fact, our opinion on this issue is more relevant than the framers. And the reason is we have so much more experience with the Electoral College. They started an experiment, not knowing how it would work out. We have seen the results of that experiment. And if the public is unhappy with the results of that experiment, then maybe the Electoral College should be changed. It's been changed before. The 12th Amendment altered the way the Electoral College operates. And if you look it up, you'll say, well, that just changed the way the vice president is elected. That's true. But the point is that the framers made a mistake that was corrected. What if they made another bigger mistake? The Electoral College is not sacrosanct because the framers supported it, because they came up with it, because they included it. As a matter of fact, the opposite is true. Instead of giving you a quote from a historical figure, I'm going to play a little piece from pop culture from the movie With Honors that will explain why it is we don't have to be that concerned with the framers.
You asked the question, sir. Let me answer it. The genius of the Constitution is that it can always be changed. The genius of the Constitution is that it makes no permanent rule other than its faith in the wisdom of ordinary people to govern themselves.
Faith in the wisdom of the people is exactly what makes the Constitution incomplete and crude.
Crude? No, sir. Our founding parents were pompous, middle-aged white farmers, but they were also great men because they knew one thing that all great men should know, that they didn't know everything. They knew they were going to make mistakes, but they made sure to leave a way to correct them. They didn't think of themselves as leaders. They wanted a government of citizens, not royalty. A government of listeners, not lecturers. A government that could change, not stand still.
What he said there is the truth. The framers did put in place the Electoral College. They also created a system that would change their document in the future. Anything they didn't think of, any mistake they made, we can change it. And if, granted, that's a big if the Electoral College does not serve the American interest, then it should be changed or even eliminated. Now, that's my problem with it. This system that prevents the public from voting for president shows no faith in the wisdom of the people. And maybe you think like that college professor in the movie clip did, that faith in the wisdom of the people makes the Constitution crude. But they're wrong. Now, I'm not naive. I live in America. I see what the American public is like. I see what TV they watch, what movies are popular, what music is popular. I read the commentary online. I see what people talk about and what they're concerned with. And I realize that maybe it's not such a good idea to have these people voting for president. And I'm about to roll out a quote here, even though I said that historical quotes are not important. I'm going to quote Winston Churchill because he worded it better than I could. The greatest argument against democracy is to spend 5 minutes with the average voter. Now, I'm not certain that's a word-for-word quote because when I looked that up, I found 3 different versions of it, so I apologize if I didn't quite get it right. But he's right. You talk to the people, and it scares you to think that they're voting for the president. However, Winston Churchill also said this about democracy. Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms of government. It is the best of all possible worlds. It is the best of all possible systems. And faith in the wisdom of the people is essential to it, because the alternative is to have electors. Nameless people who are supposed to be rubber stamps for the political parties. I don't trust the political parties that far. If I were a Republican, I would not trust the Republican Party with my presidential vote. If I were a Democrat, I wouldn't trust the Democratic Party with it. I would like my vote as an individual to count. And the electors, as I've said, don't even have to vote according to party lines if they decide not to. Now, if I have not convinced you, if you still think that the office of the president is too big a responsibility for the public to vote for, then we can discuss that. There is an alternative that I will consider. I will not support it, because I do believe that a popular election is a better system. But even if America doesn't run with that, we need to have something other than the electors voting for the president. And we're going to go back to the framers here, because, as I said, what they thought was relevant. The things they didn't institute are also relevant in this case. There was a lot of discussion about how the president would be elected, and eventually they settled on electors being put in place. But they had other ideas for who would vote for president, other than the public. One would be the state governors. They had the idea that maybe each state governor should cast their vote for president. Now, I like that a lot better than the electors. There was also the idea that each individual state legislature should vote for the president. I like that even better. Because even though the public doesn't get to vote for the president using that method, the leadership that the people voted for gets to vote for the president. Not some nameless elector who is supposed to be a rubber stamp for a political party, but leadership chosen by the people gets to choose the national leadership. That makes sense. But they also answer to the people. It's not just a fine if they screw up. If they choose someone that the people of the state didn't want, they get voted out of office. So they have a lot more on the line. They have a lot more to consider than any elector does under our system. So if you take nothing else from this video, if you are a supporter of the Electoral College still, then start telling people what should be changed about it, because that is much more important than maintaining the Electoral College. We need to protect the presidency from potential treachery of the electors, even though it hasn't happened yet. Be aware that even if you disagree with me that a popular vote is a good idea, that you still should demand a change to this system. It's extremely important, and we need to do that now while attention is being paid. A year from now, people are going to forget it. They did after the 2000 election, and they will again if we don't move towards it. Let's change the system at the very least to exclude party electors and include some other form of leadership to vote for president, at the very least. Now, thank you for listening.